Welcome to Healthy Kidneys After 60. I am your host, Jane Pauley. We often think of our health in terms of the big things, the heart surgeries, the long-term diets, or the medications we take. But what if I told you that one of the most dangerous moments of your day is actually the one where you feel the most relaxed? Today, we are discussing a silent risk hiding in your bathroom. Joining us is a man who has spent decades on the front lines of medicine, witnessing firsthand how small habits can lead to life-altering consequences. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, it is an honor to have you here to help us navigate these waters.
It is a pleasure to be with you, Jane. You know, in my years of clinical practice, I have stood at the bedsides of so many patients who were blindsided. They would say, "Doctor, I was just going about my normal evening routine." They didn't realize that for a body over 60, the simple act of stepping into a shower can be a high-stakes event for the cardiovascular system. I am grateful for this platform because we aren't here to cause fear, but to provide the clarity that saves lives.
Dr. Gupta, I want to start with something that haunts many families who are caring for aging parents, or perhaps those who are over 60 themselves and living alone. We have all heard those stories, the ones that stay with you. Someone goes to bed feeling perfectly fine, perhaps a bit tired after a long day, but otherwise healthy. They say their good nights, they close their eyes, and then the morning comes. But the person who wakes up isn't the same. They are struggling to find their words, or they realize their right arm just won't move the way it should. It feels like a lightning strike out of nowhere. But as a doctor who has seen the aftermath of these overnight strokes so many times, I have to ask, is it truly out of nowhere? Or are there invisible triggers, everyday habits that set the stage for this tragedy while we are just trying to get clean and ready for bed?
That is the question that gets to the very heart of preventive medicine, Jane. When we see a patient in the ER with a stroke that happened overnight, the family is almost always in shock because to the naked eye, nothing happened. But when I sit down and reconstruct the final hours of that person's day, a pattern often emerges. It's rarely a single massive event that starts the fire. It's a series of small physiological shifts, and you hit on something vital: the bathroom. For a person in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, the bathroom is actually one of the most physiologically demanding environments in the house. We think of it as a place of hygiene and relaxation, but for your blood vessels, it can be a gauntlet. I've seen countless cases where a stroke wasn't an accident of fate, but a result of a body being pushed past its limit by something as simple as a shower.
It is almost hard to wrap my head around that. Only a shower, we say? We've been doing it our entire lives, but as we age, does the risk become something we just have to accept as an inevitable part of growing older? Is there a point where the body simply becomes too fragile for the routines we've kept for 50 years? Or is it that we are performing those routines in a way that our older cardiovascular system can no longer handle? I think many of our listeners feel a sense of dread, wondering if they are walking into a trap every time they turn on the faucet. Is it the heat, the timing, or perhaps something even more subtle that turns a refreshing bath into a biological crisis?
It's not about inevitability, Jane, and that's the most important message I can give. It's about adaptation. Think of your body like a classic car. A vintage engine can still run beautifully, but you can't redline it the way you did when it was brand new. When you turn 60, 70, or 80, your blood vessels lose some of that youthful elasticity. They don't snap back as quickly. When you introduce extreme heat or sudden cold, or when you change your body's position rapidly in a slippery, humid environment, you are asking that classic engine to perform a very complex task. We are talking about the delicate balance of blood pressure, the viscosity or thickness of your blood, and the way your heart reacts to temperature shifts. If the water is too hot, your vessels dilate, they open up wide, and your blood pressure can plummet. If you are already dehydrated or on blood pressure medication, your brain might suddenly find itself gasping for oxygen. That overnight stroke often begins right there in the shower as a small clot forms or a vessel fails because the system was stressed. Throughout our talk today, I want to break down exactly which habits, the ones we think are harmless, are actually the most dangerous, and how we can keep our independence without giving up our comfort.
Dr. Gupta, I think about my own parents and so many friends who swear by a steaming hot bath late at night to soothe those aching joints and help them drift off to sleep. It feels like the ultimate comfort, almost like a warm hug for a tired body that has carried the weight of 7 or 8 decades. But when you talk about the cardiovascular system being a classic engine that can no longer handle being redlined, I start to wonder if that very heat, the thing that feels so restorative, is actually acting as a silent stressor. How does a simple rise in water temperature transform from a remedy for arthritis into a potential trigger for a neurological crisis? And what is really happening inside the heart and the brain when someone stays under that hot spray for just a few minutes too long?
It is a heartbreaking irony, Jane, because the sensation of relaxation is actually a sign that your system is struggling to compensate. When you immerse yourself in very hot water, your peripheral blood vessels, the ones near the skin, open up wide to try and shed that heat. In medical terms, we call this massive vasodilation. For a young person, the heart just pumps a bit faster and everything stays balanced, but for an older adult, this causes the blood pressure to drop precipitously. I remember a specific case that haunts me because it was so preventable. Robert Reynolds, a 74-year-old gentleman from Columbus, Ohio, was a retired teacher who loved his nightly ritual. He suffered from chronic back pain and high blood pressure, for which he took medication right before bed. One Tuesday night, Robert stayed in a very hot shower for nearly 20 minutes, enjoying the steam. When he finally turned off the water and stepped out onto the cool bathroom floor, his blood pressure, already lowered by his meds and further crashed by the heat, simply couldn't get enough oxygenated blood up to his brain. He felt a bit dizzy, which he dismissed as just being tired from the heat, and he went straight to bed. But while he slept, that period of low flow allowed a small ischemic event to take hold. By the time his wife tried to wake him the next morning, Robert couldn't find the words to say hello, and the entire right side of his face had lost its light. He had suffered a significant stroke, all because his body couldn't recover from that one hot shower.
That story is a chilling reminder of how fragile that balance can be, especially when we are just trying to take care of ourselves. It makes me think about those moments when we step out of the tub and feel that sudden rush or a slight wobble in our step. We so often tell ourselves, oh, I just got up too fast, or it's just the steam making me a bit lightheaded. But after hearing about what happened to Robert in Columbus, I have to wonder if we are ignoring the body's final warnings. Are there specific red flags that a person might experience while still inside the bathroom? Perhaps a certain type of dizziness or a sensation in the limbs that should tell them they are in immediate danger of a stroke and need to get help right away?
You are touching on the golden window of prevention, Jane, and Robert actually felt those signs but didn't know how to read them. If you are in the shower and you feel a sudden heavy lethargy in your limbs, or if the room starts to tilt in a way that feels different from simple tiredness, that is your brain crying out for blood. For someone like Robert Reynolds, the warning was that subtle darkness at the edges of his vision as he reached for his towel. In the medical literature, like the reports from Harvard Health, we see that older adults with even mild hypotension are at a much higher risk of these orthostatic events, where the blood pools in the legs and leaves the head empty. If you feel your heart racing or thumping against your ribs after being in the heat, that is your heart screaming that it can't keep up with the dilated vessels. We must stop treating dizziness as a normal part of aging. It is a neurological emergency in slow motion. If Robert had simply sat down on the floor the moment he felt that sway, and perhaps called out for his wife to bring him a glass of cool water, the outcome might have been entirely different. Instead, he pushed through, went to sleep, and the lack of perfusion to his brain over those next 6 hours changed his life forever. We have to respect the heat, Jane, because for a 74-year-old heart, hot enough to relax is often hot enough to collapse.
It seems so logical to just get everything done at once, eat a good dinner, take your evening pills, and then hop in the shower so you can go to bed feeling clean and settled. We call it efficiency. And for many seniors, it's a way to maintain a sense of order in their lives. But as I listen to you, Dr. Gupta, I'm starting to realize that this efficient routine might actually be a recipe for a perfect storm. When we mix a full stomach, which requires blood for digestion, with medications designed to lower blood pressure, and then add the heat of a bath, are we essentially asking the body to do 3 impossible things at the same time? Is this why the brain suddenly finds itself at the bottom of the priority list for blood flow?
That is exactly what is happening, Jane, and it is a phenomenon we call postprandial hypotension. Think of your blood supply as a fixed budget. When you eat a large meal, the accounting department of your body sends a massive amount of blood to your stomach and intestines to process those nutrients. This is a heavy draw on the system. Now, if you are an older adult and you add blood pressure medication into the mix, your body's ability to move that blood back to the brain is already compromised. When you then step into a warm bath, you are opening the floodgates of your skin's blood vessels. Now, the budget is bankrupt. The stomach has the blood, the skin has the blood, and the brain is left with nothing. The Cleveland Clinic has documented how this drop in pressure can last for up to 2 hours after eating. If you shower during that window, you are essentially robbing your brain of its lifeblood. It's not just about feeling a bit faint, it's about the fact that low blood flow is a primary driver of ischemic strokes in the elderly.
It's a terrifying thought that doing something as healthy as eating a meal and taking prescribed medicine could actually set us up for a fall. I think many people listening are wondering about the safe way to handle this. If someone is used to that evening routine, is there a specific amount of time they should be waiting, or a sign they should look for that tells them their body has finished the work of digestion and is stable enough for a shower? We want to give people practical boundaries so they don't feel like they are living in constant fear of their own schedule.
The rule of thumb I give my own family is at least 60 minutes, but for someone over 70, 90 minutes is even safer. You need to let that digestive surge pass. I want people to understand that your body is working harder than you think after a meal. If you feel that food coma or extreme sleepiness after eating, that is a sign your blood pressure has dropped. That is the absolute worst time to enter a hot, humid bathroom. We see so many cases where a patient did everything right, they took their pills, they ate their vegetables, but they didn't respect the timing. By simply shifting your shower to before dinner or waiting until your evening news program is over, you allow your cardiovascular system to stabilize. We aren't asking people to change who they are just to change the clock. This small gap of 1 hour can be the difference between a restful night's sleep and waking up in an ambulance because your brain couldn't survive the budget deficit you created in the bathroom.
There is a certain comfort in a closed bathroom door. It's the one place where the world stays out, the steam builds up, and you can just breathe in that heavy, moist air. For many older folks, it feels like a private spa, a place to let the steam work on their lungs and their skin. But as you've pointed out, Dr. Gupta, what feels like a sanctuary can quickly become a trap. When the mirrors get foggy and the air gets thick, we aren't just losing sight of our reflection. Are we losing our grip on our physical safety? Why is the combination of a closed space and a long duration so particularly hazardous for someone whose heart and lungs have seen many years of service?
It is a trap of comfort, Jane. In a small, enclosed bathroom, the steam displaces oxygen and the humidity makes it harder for the body to cool itself. This creates a tropical microenvironment that puts immense strain on the heart. I think of Linda Thompson, a 76-year-old woman from Raleigh, North Carolina. Linda was a very independent woman who prided herself on her self-care. She had a habit of locking her bathroom door, turning the water to a high heat, and staying in there for nearly half an hour because she loved the way the steam helped her breathing. One evening, after a heavy dinner and her usual medications, Linda followed this routine. Inside that locked, windowless room, the air became incredibly thin and the heat caused her blood pressure to tank. She didn't even realize she was losing consciousness until she felt her knees buckle. She tried to reach for the door, but it was locked from the inside. She fell against the tub, sustaining a head injury and a minor stroke because of the prolonged lack of oxygenated blood to her brain while she lay on the floor. It was only because her daughter happened to stop by and heard the water running for an hour that Linda was saved.
That is a harrowing scenario, the idea of being trapped in your own place of comfort. It makes me wonder about the things we take for granted, like locking the door for privacy or not having a vent fan running because it's too noisy. For someone living alone, like Linda, these small choices seem so minor until the moment they aren't. Beyond just the timing and the heat, what are the structural or habitual changes we should be making in our bathrooms? If the steam is the enemy, how do we balance the need for a warm bath with the absolute necessity of keeping the air breathable and the exit accessible?
Privacy should never come at the cost of your life, Jane. The first thing I tell my patients is stop locking the bathroom door if you are home alone or even with a spouse who might need to reach you. If you must have privacy, use a vacant sign, but keep that lock open. Secondly, ventilation is not a luxury, it is a medical necessity. You need that fan on or the door cracked open to allow oxygen to circulate and to keep the humidity from overwhelming your senses. For someone like Linda Thompson, a simple shower chair and a grab bar would have turned a life-threatening fall into a minor stumble. Standing for 20 minutes in a hot, low-oxygen environment is an athletic feat that a 76-year-old body shouldn't be asked to perform. We need to encourage our seniors to bathe like a pro, short durations, usually under 10 minutes, with plenty of airflow and always having a point of contact like a chair or a rail. Linda survived, but she lost her confidence that day. She told me later that she never realized her spa time was actually a slow suffocation of her circulatory system.
We often talk about strokes in a very clinical way with charts and percentages, but the reality is much more personal. It's the loss of the ability to hold a grandchild, to tell a story, or even to walk to the mailbox. When a senior has a shower accident, it's rarely just a bruise or a broken bone. It's the moment their independence is snatched away. I've seen it happen where a single slip leads to a hospital stay, and from there, the person never truly returns to the home they love. Dr. Gupta, why is the physical trauma of a fall in the bathroom so often the precursor to a major stroke? Is it the shock to the system, or is the stroke actually what causes the fall in the first place?
It's a chicken and the egg problem that often ends in tragedy, Jane. Sometimes a silent stroke, a sudden lack of blood to the balance centers of the brain, causes the slip. Other times, the physical trauma of the fall, the sudden spike in cortisol, and the terrifying rise in blood pressure as the person panics, triggers a secondary cardiovascular event. The bathroom is a landscape of hard surfaces, porcelain, tile, metal. There is no soft place to land. When an older person slips, the sheer force of the impact can cause internal bleeding or dislodge a plaque in the carotid artery, which then travels to the brain. This is why we see such a high correlation between bathroom falls and permanent disability. As we've seen in studies highlighted by Harvard Health, the goal isn't just to stop the fall, it's to stop the physiological earthquake that follows. We have to change the mindset from "I'll be careful" to "I will prepare the environment so I don't have to be perfect."
It's that shift from careful to prepared that seems so vital, but I hear the voices of our listeners who say, "Jane, I've been bathing this way for 60 years. I'm not some frail old person." There is a pride there, a resistance to admitting that the body has changed. How do you talk to a patient who is stubborn about their independence? How do you explain that using a shower chair or a lower water temperature isn't a sign of weakness, but a strategy for staying powerful and independent for another 20 years? It feels like we are fighting against the ego as much as we are fighting against the biology of aging.
You hit the nail on the head. I tell my patients that a pilot uses a checklist not because he's a bad pilot, but because the stakes are too high to rely on memory or luck. Using a shower chair is like having a co-pilot. It's a tool for longevity. I often tell them about the rule of moderation. If you love the heat, fine, but let's bring it down from scalding to comfortably warm. If you love a long soak, let's do it in a way that doesn't leave you gasping. We aren't trying to take away your pleasure. We are trying to ensure you are around to enjoy it tomorrow. I've sat with too many people who regretted their pride once they were sitting in a rehabilitation center learning how to swallow again. Independence is maintained through wisdom, not through denial. The most independent thing you can do is recognize that your 70-year-old vessels deserve a little more respect and a little less stress.
I love that phrase, the signs that whisper, because in our busy lives, we are so used to ignoring the small things. We have a headache and we take an aspirin, we feel dizzy and we sit down for a minute. But in the context of our discussion, those whispers can be the only warning we get before a life-changing stroke. Many seniors are so stoic, they don't want to worry their children, they don't want to be a burden, so they keep these little moments of unsteadiness to themselves. Dr. Gupta, if we were to listen very closely to what the body says during or after a bath, what are the 3 specific whispers that should never be ignored? What are the signs that say, stop everything and call for help, even if the person feels mostly okay a few minutes later?
This is the most critical part of our conversation, Jane, because these whispers are actually screams in the language of neurology. The first is what I call the transient tilt. This happened to James Wallace, a 79-year-old man from Phoenix, Arizona. James was a very active gardener who lived alone. One afternoon, after a long session in his greenhouse, he took a long, steamy shower. As he stepped out into the hallway, he felt a sudden momentary sensation that the floor was a boat on the ocean. It passed in 30 seconds. He thought, oh, I'm just dehydrated. But that was a TIA, a transient ischemic attack. The second sign is the heavy tongue. If you find yourself struggling to form a word, or if your speech feels thick for just a moment after the heat of a bath, that is a direct sign of brain stress. And the third is one-sided weakness, even if it's just a clumsy hand that drops a soap bottle or a foot that feels slightly asleep. James Wallace ignored his boat sensation and his slightly clumsy hand. 2 hours later, he was found collapsed in his hallway, unable to speak because that whisper was the precursor to a massive blockage.
Hearing about James in Phoenix makes me realize how easy it is to rationalize these things away. We want to believe we are okay. But for someone living alone like James, that moment of rationalization is the most dangerous time. If someone experiences one of these whispers, the tilt, the heavy tongue, or the clumsy hand, and they are alone in the house, what is the very first thing they should do? Should they try to lie down? Should they drink water? Or is it a 911 or nothing situation? We need to give people a clear protocol for when they are in that terrifying moment of realization.
If you experience any of those three signs, even if they go away, you must call for help immediately. Do not wait and see. Do not lie down for a nap. A nap is the most dangerous thing you can do during a stroke because you are essentially letting the brain die in the dark. If you are alone, the protocol is call 911 first, then unlock your front door so paramedics can get in. Third, sit on the floor, not a chair where you can fall off, but the floor, and try to stay calm. James Wallace luckily had his cell phone on the hallway table when he felt the second stronger wave of dizziness. If he hadn't reached it, he might not be with us today. For our listeners, your body doesn't whisper for fun. It's giving you a chance to save your own life. Treat every mini symptom like a major alarm. It is much better to have the paramedics tell you it was just dehydration than to have a neurologist tell your children it's too late.
We see it all over the news and social media, the cold plunge craze, the idea that jumping into ice-cold water is the secret to eternal youth and a bulletproof immune system. It sounds so invigorating, doesn't it? The idea of shocking the system into health. But I worry that a 65-year-old watching a 20-something influencer might think this is exactly what they need to wake up their tired joints. Dr. Gupta, is this a case of what's good for the goose is not good for the gander? When we take a body that has seen 6 decades of life and hit it with a blast of cold water first thing in the morning, what kind of shock are we actually delivering to the arteries?
It is a dangerous trend for the over 60 population, Jane. In medicine, we have something called the cold pressor response. When your skin hits cold water, your sympathetic nervous system goes into overdrive. It's an instant fight or flight reaction. Your heart rate spikes and your peripheral blood vessels constrict violently to keep heat at the core. For a young person with flexible, clean arteries, this is a workout. But for someone with any level of atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, this sudden spike in pressure can be catastrophic. It's like putting a high-pressure fire hose through a brittle old pipe. You risk a hemorrhagic stroke where a vessel actually ruptures under the pressure, or a heart attack as the heart struggles to pump against that sudden resistance. The research published in journals like the American Journal of Physiology shows that this response is significantly more intense and less controlled as we age.
So the very thing people are doing to feel alive could actually be putting their lives at risk. It's such a confusing time for health information. If someone truly believes in the benefits of cold, perhaps for inflammation or alertness, is there a senior safe way to do it? Or should we be telling everyone over a certain age to just stay away from the ice bucket lifestyle entirely? I want to make sure we aren't just saying, don't do it, but explaining the gradient of safety between a refreshing cool rinse and a dangerous physiological shock.
The key word is gradual, Jane. If you want the benefits of a cool shower, you never, ever start with the cold. You start with comfortable, lukewarm water to let your heart settle into the routine. Then, over the course of several minutes, you slowly turn the dial toward cool, not icy, just cool. This allows your blood vessels to adapt slowly rather than reacting in a panic. I've seen patients who thought they were being tough by dousing themselves with cold water at 6 o'clock a.m., and they ended up in my care with a hypertensive crisis. We have to remember that your body at 65 is a masterpiece of survival, but it is not a crash test dummy. Respect the transition from sleep to wakefulness. Your blood pressure is naturally higher in the morning anyway. Why add a cold shock on top of that? Stick to the middle ground. Extreme temperatures are for extreme athletes, not for people who want to enjoy a long, healthy retirement.
It is so encouraging to know that we aren't helpless in this. After all the warnings about heat and timing and cold shocks, it feels like there is a path forward that is actually quite simple. You've mentioned that something as basic as a glass of water or a few minutes of timing could be the difference between health and disaster. I think about our listeners who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed right now. They might be looking at their bathroom and seeing nothing but danger. Let's bring it back to the small, manageable wins. How can something as simple as hydration or the length of a shower act as a shield for the brain? And why are these habits so powerful for the over 60 heart?
Safety is found in the small details, Jane. One of the biggest risks during a hot bath is dehydration. When you sweat in a humid bathroom, your blood volume actually decreases, making the blood thicker and more prone to clotting. This is why I tell my patients about Michael Jennings, a 68-year-old from Denver, Colorado. Michael was a very health-conscious man who followed all the latest trends, including those cold morning douses we talked about. He started having these strange, foggy spells after his morning routine. I suggested 3 simple changes. First, he had to drink a full 8-ounce glass of water before he even stepped into the bathroom. This prehydrates the system and provides a buffer for the blood pressure. Second, he had to limit his shower to exactly 10 minutes, no more steaming his joints. And third, he had to transition from warm to cool slowly. Michael told me that within a week, the fogginess disappeared. He wasn't sick. He was just mismanaging his body's fluid and temperature balance.
It's amazing that a glass of water and a timer could be life-saving tools. For someone like Michael in Denver, it sounds like he just needed a new set of operating instructions for his body. But I want to ask about the after part of the shower. We've talked a lot about what happens inside the bathroom, but is there a danger zone in the 20 minutes after we step out? Should we be sitting still, or is it okay to get dressed and start a busy day right away? I've noticed that some people feel wiped out after a bath. Is that a sign they should be listening to more closely?
That wiped out feeling is your body telling you that its blood pressure is still struggling to normalize. The 20 minutes after a shower are what I call the re-entry phase. Your body is moving from a hot, humid environment back to a cooler, drier one. For Michael Jennings, I instructed him to sit on the edge of his bed, fully clothed or in a robe, for at least 5 minutes before starting his day. This gives the baroreceptors in your neck, the sensors that manage blood pressure, a chance to catch up. If you feel exhausted after a shower, it means you stayed in too long or the water was too hot. It shouldn't be an athletic event. It should leave you feeling refreshed, not drained. If you feel like you need a nap after a bath, you have pushed your heart too hard. Drink another glass of water, sit quietly, and let your classic engine cool down properly. These small habits, the water before, the timer during, and the rest after, are the 3 pillars that keep the bathroom a place of safety instead of a place of risk.
As we move toward the end of this incredibly eye-opening conversation, I want to make sure our listeners have something they can practically take to the bank, or in this case, take to the bathroom. We've covered so much ground, from Robert's story in Columbus to the whispers of the brain. If you could distill all of this medical wisdom, the research from Harvard and the Cleveland Clinic, and your own decades of clinical experience into a definitive checklist, what would it look like? We want our seniors to feel empowered, not afraid. What are the non-negotiable rules for a stroke-proof bathing routine for anyone over the age of 60?
Empowerment comes from knowledge, Jane, so let's build that checklist. Rule number 1, temperature. Never use scalding water. Aim for lukewarm plus around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. If it makes your skin turn bright red, it is too hot for your heart. Rule number 2, timing. Never shower immediately after a large meal or after taking blood pressure medication. Give your body at least an hour, preferably 90 minutes, to manage its blood budget. Rule number 3, airflow. Always keep a vent fan on or the door slightly ajar. You need oxygen to keep your brain alert. Rule number 4, Duration, keep it under 10 minutes. If you need longer to soak your joints, do it in a way where you are sitting down on a shower chair. And rule number 5, the before and after water. Drink water before you go in and after you come out. As the research in PMC suggests, maintaining blood viscosity through hydration is one of the simplest ways to prevent the clots that cause strokes. This isn't about being frail, it's about being smart.
That is such a clear, actionable list. I think about how many people might hear this and realize they've been breaking 4 out of those 5 rules every single day for years. It's a lot to take in, but it's so vital. I want to dig a little deeper into that post-meal rule. For many, dinner is at 6 o'clock p.m., and they like to be in bed by 8 o'clock p.m. If they wait 90 minutes, they are showering right before sleep. Is there a conflict there? Does a shower right before bed cause other issues? Or is it purely the full stomach that we are worried about? We want to help people find that sweet spot in their evening schedule.
That is a great point, Jane. The best sweet spot is actually to shower before dinner. It warms the body, relaxes the muscles, and then you can sit down to your meal while your blood pressure is already stable. If you must shower after dinner, then yes, the 90-minute wait is crucial, but try to avoid going straight from a hot shower to a flat-lying position in bed. When you lie down, your blood pressure shifts again. For my patients, I suggest showering at 5:30 p.m., eating at 6:30 p.m., and then enjoying a quiet evening. This separates the 3 big events: showering, eating, and sleeping, allowing the body to handle each one individually. We also have to remember the cold presser research. If you are a fan of cold water, keep it for the very end and keep it very brief. No ice shocks. By following these medical guidelines, you aren't just preventing a fall, you are protecting the integrity of your brain's blood supply. You are making sure that the classic car stays on the road for many more miles.
Dr. Gupta, we've spent this hour talking about blood pressure, vessels, and medical protocols, but as we close, I want to touch on the heart of the matter. For a person in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, the greatest fear isn't necessarily death, it's the loss of self. It's the fear of being a burden, of losing the ability to speak clearly, to remember the names of loved ones, or to live independently in the home they've built. A stroke doesn't just attack the body, it attacks the life you've worked so hard to create. As we wrap up this episode of Healthy Kidneys After 60, what is your final message to those who want to protect their tomorrow? How do we move forward with a sense of joy and safety rather than a sense of fragility?
You are so right, Jane. My job as a doctor is to protect yourself. When I see a patient who has lost their speech or their mobility due to a stroke, I see a library that has been partially burned. It is devastating, but the message I want to leave everyone with is one of immense hope. You are not falling apart because you are over 60. You are simply in a different season of life that requires a different set of rules. Think of your body as a high-performance instrument. You wouldn't treat a Stradivarius violin with the same rough handling as a plastic toy. You treat it with care, you keep it in a stable environment, and you respect its age. By making these small adjustments, the lukewarm water, the hydration, the timing, you aren't admitting defeat. You are actually declaring your intention to stay in the game. You are saying, I value my voice, I value my steps, and I value my memories enough to change my routine. We want you to wake up every morning with your world intact. That is the goal of everything we've discussed today.
That is a beautiful way to look at it, treating ourselves like a masterpiece that deserves careful handling. It's about driving smoothly, so we can see more of the scenery. I want to thank you, Dr. Gupta, for your warmth and for making these complex medical truths so accessible. To our listeners, we hope this conversation has given you the tools to feel more confident in your daily life. Let's remember those 3 golden rules. Tam am vua vavaunuk tutu, keep it warm and gradual. Dung toidim, get the timing right with your meals and meds. And ngan, thwang, kanuk, keep it short, keep the air moving, and stay hydrated. These aren't just tips, they are your roadmap to a safer tomorrow.
Thank you, Jane. It has been a privilege. My final wish for everyone listening is simple. May your mornings always be clear, your voices always be strong, and your bathrooms always be a place of safety. Please take care of yourselves and each other. It was an honor to share these stories and these solutions with you all.
And thank you all for joining us on Healthy Kidneys After 60. We hope today's episode helps you or a loved one stay safe and vibrant. If you found this information helpful, Please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our upcoming podcasts, where we will continue to dive deep into the health topics that matter most to you. Until next time, I'm Jane Pauley, wishing you a healthy, steady, and beautiful day.